What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive. Now, I'm always buying and selling cars, as you guys have seen on the channel, and I get a lot of questions as far as what is my process for buying a used car, specifically mostly performance cars. So I thought I would make a video where I show you guys start to finish what I look for when it comes to buying cars. Now, what better way to do that than to buy one myself? Except I'm not doing it this time. It's a friend. We're going to Tampa. We're gonna hit up the car that he's looking at is a 4Runner. So kind of basic, but there's a lot of reasons that we're going to the south to buy this car, which I'll get into later. Now, a lot of buying a car is obviously inspecting it and looking at it in person, but in my opinion, there is so much more work that you can do leading up to even seeing the car, and I think that gets often overlooked. So let's cover that now before we jump on this plane, head to Tampa, and buy a car. So in general, I really prefer to buy cars from private sellers. There's a time and place for a dealer purchase, but unfortunately, you lose so much history and knowledge when a car goes to a dealer. So a lot of this will pertain to private sales, but they are some useful questions to ask in general. First and foremost, when it comes to car buying, get the seller on the phone. Text or email are fine for making first contact, but any real questions I want to ask, I ask over the phone. Reason being, I find it harder for people to lie over the phone, or at least it's easier to tell if someone's lying. I straight up use the time I talk with a seller as an interview. I'm getting a feel for how they treated the car by asking open-ended questions, and I'm making a judgment call based on their responses. Questions like, what did you use the car for? Have you ever had any issues with it, past or present? Or, do you mind if I ask why you're selling? Can lead to some interesting information on the car. Before you even call someone, do your homework on the car. Sellers appreciate people that are already familiar with the car they're selling, and it also increases your credibility and rapport with the seller. So for this M3, I might say something like, I know these cars can have a problem with rod bearings. Can you tell me if they've been replaced or if you've done an oil analysis on the car? This is obviously specific to this generation M3, but Googling for common problems of any car will unveil great questions to ask. The last tip I have before going to look at a car is this. Verify if the seller is being honest. These days, it's so easy to find people on social media. Search for their phone number in Google. Search for their name on Facebook. I can't tell you how many times I've found someone on social media, and I know a lot about them before I even pick up the phone. It sounds creepy, but it's good practice and might help you think of questions. Here's a good reason why you should do this. One thing I like to do is test the seller with a question I already know the answer to because of the research I've done. As in, if I see on Instagram that this person took the car to the track, I might ask, has the car seen any sort of performance driving or track day? And then you can gauge the person's response from there. A lot of people are honest, but I can tell you for sure I've had a lot of people feed me BS that I found blatantly false by looking through their online publicly available profile. Now, this 4Runner my friend was buying was from a dealer, so he had limited history on the car, but the rest of what I'm going to share involves what to look for when checking out a car in person. Okay, so we've already talked about basically all the things leading up to the point of actually going to look at a car, all the things that you should do, in my opinion, ahead of time to talk to the seller about and kind of get general information about the car. But let's talk about some things that you should do when you finally do get to see the car. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details of just the regular basic stuff that there's already a million videos on. Like, you need to check all the fluids, like the oil and stuff. You need to check the tires, the brakes. Like, that's stuff that is pretty basic, and there's other videos that go into much more depth. I'm talking about kind of some things that you might not consider automatically. So the first thing really is rust, and that's basically the whole reason that my friend Adam, who is buying this 4Runner, we went all the way down to Florida to buy it. Where we live in the Rust Belt in Ohio, basically like these cars will just get destroyed because of salt on the road, and that's something that you should look out for. And it's not just what you should look for on body panels, like exterior body panels. You need to be looking under the car. So you know, sellers might say there's no rust on the car, but they might be referring to like there's no rust on the rear quarters or something, which is something super common, or on the tailgate, especially on these cars. But you really need to be looking up under the car, looking at the frame, all the suspension components, and just making sure that there's no like very serious rust, because that could be number one, structural, and number two, it just makes for a pain in the ass if you have to work on it. Rusty bolts break off and it's just a huge disaster. So the other thing is, and it kind of goes along with like your seller's definition, you should definitely probably, if it's a more expensive car, get like a Carfax or something to look for accidents. But not all accidents show up on Carfaxes. So I'm going to take you over here. Some things that I've learned with buying cars is that you can tell if like a hood has been repainted if you run your hand along the edge here. Like you could do this on really any body panel. On the door, if you run it along the edge and it's real rough, that means that there's a sanding line, which basically means that at some point the hood was painted and sanded at some point. So it could have been an accident if that's the case, or maybe like somebody just wanted to paint over rock chips or something like that. So if you can kind of like run your hand along certain body panels just to feel if there's a sharp edge. Once again, that is indicative of a sanding line. And to that extent, get under the car, look at the just kind of front bumper, back bumper underneath, and see if anything looks out of sorts. Once again, cars get in accidents all the time that are not reported. So just because your car has a clean Carfax doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't in any accidents. While we're up here at the front of the car, one thing I do definitely like to do, regardless if it's like, you know, a private seller or what, I like to have them, before I get there, I tell them like, don't start the car if possible. Like, don't have the car already warmed up. Don't drive it somewhere. Like, let me come to you, and I want to be there for a cold start of a car. So that's kind of like the third tip that I have. Engines, just cars in general, may act very differently when they're cold, and that might, if they idle rough or something, that might be indicative of a problem that is not necessarily visible when it's warm. So if possible, ask the seller or dealer, whoever you're buying from, to don't bring the car around. Like, let me come to the car, and I want to be there for a cold start. You can definitely get some more information about the car potentially with that. After obviously you've cold started a car, you're going to want to take it for a drive, and once again, there's already general things you want to do when you go for a drive, but certainly you want to get it up to temperature. Take it for a decent test drive. Make sure it's not going to overheat. If you just kind of take it around the block, it might not even get fully up to temperature, and you might not know whether or not it's head gasket's blown or something like that. So get it up to temperature. And then the other thing I like to say is, you know, get on it. Like, go full throttle, but make sure you warn the seller before you do that, because I've had better experiences over the years explaining what I'm going to do before I do it to sellers, and they're way cooler about it. If you just all of a sudden floor it, and they're like, especially in a performance car, they're like, what the hell is this guy doing? Like, he's just gonna beat my car up. But if you tell them like, hey, I just want to get on it, like, make sure everything's good. Same with brakes, like, stomp on those brakes. Warped rotors might not be totally obvious if you're just like putting around. So, you know, get on it hard, get on the brakes hard, like, just give it a good shakedown. And those are really just like kind of my big tips for checking out a car in person outside of the standard, you know, check the oil and all that stuff. So I hope you guys found this video informative. I get a lot of requests for these types of video, just like I get ones for how I find good deals and stuff like that. So I hope you guys find this informative. Hopefully you learned something. Feel free to leave comments below if there's like other things that are out of the ordinary that people should look out for when they're buying cars, that once again is not just like checking the oil, things like that. So but yeah, I appreciate you guys watching as always. If you want to check me out in between episodes, check me out on Instagram at Eat Sleep Drive TV. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.
I enjoy your big tips.
I love big tips. Oh yeah. That would suck. This is the spot, dog. I was like,
well, what is the hell Scott doing? Yeah, I saw him pull up there, so I was like, there.
that's what I'm saying. There's a
Oh.
barrier. That's why he was going on the grass.
Hey, he said he wanted us to test drive.
Go over the thing. Who cares? Do it. Testing is off-road. Sold.